think we're good enough. You want to do this real quick, fast, Thomas? Hey, William, you got to get a picture of this right here.
That's sure.
Very good. All right. All right, we're going to go ahead and hurry up through these slides real fast just so we can thank the people we need to thank and all. Thanks, everybody, for joining. Hey, Eric. Thanks for everybody for joining the San Diego Laravel User Group Meetup. What is this, our fourth or fifth?
This is our third.
Seems like so much longer. Maybe you know me. I'm Eric. Show come on Twitter.
Me, I'm PFY. Go right out on Twitter. Yeah, so our next meetup is going to be the SDPHP meetup covering Git workflows. It's going to be a really great one. Eric and I have been working a lot recently with different workflows in Git, and so we're going to see some cool stuff there.
And that's up at business.com. So again, we're doing it every other month, one North County, one downtown. So July is North County, and it's at business.com.
And then after that, the next Laravel user group is going to be July 22nd, and we'll be covering then what we were going to be covering in this meetup, which is deploying Laravel to Roku and covering Laravel Socialite, which is a platform for covering all sorts of social media authentication, publication stuff.
So the one thing I want to touch on real fast, not that it's a big deal, I just want to make sure you guys are kind of mentally prepared for it. We're not getting a lot of volunteers for food. CARI.net's been kind enough these last couple meetups to purchase the food for us. I'm not going to ask anymore. So if somebody doesn't offer to sponsor food moving forward, then we might not have food. Again, I don't think that's a showstopper for anybody. Just kind of let you guys know, because I know you guys like to eat before you get here.
And that will be updated on the meetup page. So whatever we end up with, we'll let you know beforehand.
A couple ways to stay in touch with the community here. IRC, SDPHP, real active there. Just about everybody hangs out there during the week. We do have a Slack channel now. There is a Laravel-specific channel within the Slack group. And then we have the Trello board. So if you're thinking about doing a presentation, if you'd like to do a presentation, and you don't know what topic to talk about, the Trello board is where to go. We have a nice long list of people who have suggested topics that they'd like to learn about. If nothing else, go to the Trello board, vote on topics that interest you. You can also add topics. You need to let me know you're interested in adding a topic, and I can add you to the Trello board so you can write to it. But it's a real nice way to get for people to who just want to do a presentation to kind of go there and see what topics people are interested in.
We'd like to thank our sponsors, big one, CARI.net. Thank you so much for hosting us. This has been a fantastic opportunity for us, and really provided everything we need in this perfect location.
And Diego Dev purchased the drinks and all that for us, so very happy with that. All right, without further ado, Mr. Otwell. All right, I'm going to switch on over to my laptop, so I'm going to put this on mute. All right. Okay, Taylor, thanks again for, letting us spend some time with you this afternoon.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. So I'm just going to go ahead and dive into it here. If I can get the right tab open. All right. So I guess one of the questions that's come up a lot were the origins of the Laravel framework,
Yeah.
where the name came from, where the idea came from, why you did it when there's so many other frameworks out there, and what exactly the logo is.
Okay. So it's really an interesting story. What about? Let's see, Laravel will be 4 years old this year. So about 4.5 years ago or 5 years ago, I was doing .NET, enterprise.NET, doing WinForms and COBOL and classic ASP even for a big company here in Arkansas. And I was kind of doing like the cubicle life, and there was a couple hundred programmers in this company, and I just kind of wanted to play with building my own businesses, my own startup ideas or whatever. But doing that in .NET is a little more cumbersome at the time. I don't know if it is now, but at the time, it was just trickier to host .NET than it was to host something like PHP, where you can just throw some files up on a server and connect to MySQL, and you're good to go. So I knew about PHP from college because a friend I had, we had done a project in it, but I had never really coded a lot besides that one little project we did for school. And so, but I knew it was easy to host, and so I started playing with PHP. And at first, I sort of did kind of the typical, kind of what people call the old school PHP, where you have your PHP code at the top and then some HTML, and you're kind of everything's kind of interspersed. And then I played with CodeIgniter a little bit because I was just kind of Googling about frameworks, MVC frameworks in PHP. And I knew very little about PHP, really. I was, brand new to the whole scene. And CodeIgniter, I was really impressed with CodeIgniter. It was really cool. I mean, compared to what I was doing, it was a much better than just plain PHP files. But I really wanted some of the features that I had in .NET, like some of the templating features that ASP.NET had, some of the service container, IOC container features. What else? Better database stuff, and then eventually migrations. And so at first I kind of started hacking on CodeIgniter, like trying to bring these features in as packages, and I actually released my first open source package actually was an IOC container for CodeIgniter back in 2010. Which the code of that is still really the basis for Laravel's current IOC container. But it got to the point where like I was hacking CodeIgniter so much that it was just getting kind of messy, and I was having to like edit the quote core files, the framework, blah blah blah. And so I started to build my own framework. Now, mind you, at the time I had no idea that it was like a stigma to build your own framework, because I was not really a PHP guy. Like I had never heard of I didn't go to PHP Reddit. I didn't go to any PHP forums. I didn't know anything about it, and so I just started building my own framework because I didn't know any better. And I started. It was kind of inspired by CodeIgniter in the sense that it was it was a simple framework, a pretty light framework, and it was actually inspired a lot by Sinatra at the time. As far as Laravel 1.0 goes, a really simple routing layer that's a lot like what a Slim or Silex looks like today. And so once I finished it, I kind of got sidetracked. My original goal was to build these side businesses, but I got so sidetracked and wrapped up in building this framework that I sort of like forgot about that, and then just like released the framework as kind of a product. And I wrote a lot of documentation for it because that was really important. And anyway, I put it out there. So that's kind of the backstory of where it comes from, and it's a lot. Laravel's a lot different today than it was when it first came out. It first came out as a micro framework, but now it's more kind of a full stack. People say, because it comes with an ORM, it comes with a queue library and authentication and all that, which wasn't necessarily all built in from the get-go. As far as the name and logo and stuff goes, the name is like entirely made up. There's no deep meaning behind it. It doesn't mean anything. I was just sitting around in my little apartment, back in the day, and it's so hard to come up with names that I just said, screw it. I'm just going to think of any random word, and as long as it's like pronounceable and sounds somewhat presentable, then we're just going to roll with it. And that's kind of where Laravel came from. The logo, I think, is supposed to be kind of a sort of like an off-kilter L. It was designed by this company called Fixel 3 or 4 years ago when I first started at Userscape, my previous job. And I think that's kind of the idea behind it, but it's sort of a kind of an abstract shape. But originally it was supposed to be an L.
Oh, interesting. What about what have been some of the biggest challenges with the growth of Laravel?
So the hardest thing for me, especially in the early days, was saying no to features, and I think that's hard for any open source maintainer where someone, especially if someone sends you a pull request that they've obviously put, a decent amount of work into, but it's just like not something that you think is appropriate for the framework. Maybe it's not implemented just right, or you think it's not like widely needed enough to be a part of a framework. That's always really hard because people have spent their time to build something and they want to contribute it, but it just doesn't really fit the vision. Saying no is really challenging. And then, of course, and kind of on a related note, just identifying the things that belong in something like a web framework can be pretty tough. Because you don't want to just add everything under the sun. You kind of want it to be a good toolkit for most websites and let kind of optional packages fill in the gaps. So that's always a tough line because web apps are getting more robust. Like as time goes by, now it's very common for people to do things like WebSockets and real-time updating websites. And so we recently built in a little feature to make it easier to broadcast your server-side events to the client side and do that kind of thing. Whereas maybe 4 or 5 years ago, that wouldn't have been as obvious that maybe something like that would be appropriate. But, as the times change, you kind of have to keep up with things.
I think Thomas had a question for you. That is not going to work. Sure. So I think the next question was, would you say you have a directive or mission statement when developing the framework?
Yeah, sort of. What I've kind of been thinking of as sort of my mission statement is with Laravel, I want to remove roadblocks from people when they have an idea for an app. So Laravel originally was geared to help people like me at the time, one person that has this spark of an idea and they kind of are dreaming big and they want to build this app. Laravel is a really great platform for that because it's very rapid. There's lots of learning materials out there. It very much suits that small team very well. And as it's grown, it's gotten kind of more enterprise ready too. But that's sort of the mission statement, is to remove roadblocks. So for example, like authentication. Most websites are going to need authentication. That's more or less, the degree of difficulty of implementing authentication varies from framework to framework. But with Laravel, we try to keep it really simple because it's such a common use case. Another really common use case, of course, is things like even like subscription billing. We have this package called Laravel Cashier, which is not included in the framework by default, but you can pull it in, and it makes it really easy to do monthly subscriptions to your service, and even do like coupons and trial periods and all of that. So, and that's kind of a roadblock, right? Like when I start a new app, that's the kind of one of the things I'm thinking, oh crap, I'm going to have to write all this subscription boilerplate junk, and it's just a pain, and it's something that it's something that's nobody wants to do, right? You want to focus on your app, not all this kind of authentication, billing, even your development environment, which is why we released Homestead and Forge for your production environment. So each roadblock we remove, whether that's authentication or billing or hosting or local development environment, that just gets you one step closer to building your app and doing all the fun stuff of actually, working on what makes your application unique instead of boilerplate stuff. So that's kind of the goal.
Oh, and Laravel definitely, they're one of the leaders when it comes to new features to market. Do you ever see the settling down point as far as new features you're going to introduce in Laravel?
Yeah, I can see that. Like even in this last release, some of the main stuff was we moved to PSR2, which is kind of the style guide that people are following in PHP now, which is nice. But then as far as like big features, I think we only had one big feature, and it really wasn't even that much code. It was only a few files for the event broadcasting. So things have been trending slower over the past 2 years or so, and because kind of going back to what I said before, there's only so much you can put in a web framework, and it sort of has to be community driven. And I think we're at a pretty good spot right now where most of our bases are covered, and we're mainly just kind of polishing and cleaning up rough edges and stuff. And I think you'll see more room for, like, for me personally, I've been hacking around on kind of for people who want a little more scaffolding on the application. That's not really something I would bake into Laravel, but it's something that I might build and offer as something you can pull in if you want to. So something that's not actually you're going to get out of the box, but I think you could flesh out some other optional features that add benefit without kind of bulking up the core framework.
Cool. The long-awaited next version, next major release of PHP is finally on the horizon with PHP 7.
Yeah.
Is there anything about that excites you?
Well, just the speed for one looks awesome. I've seen graphs where some of the Zend people they had a comparison of Zend and Laravel, and both of those frameworks were doubled in speed, which is big because Laravel and Zend are both full stack frameworks that are doing a lot under the hood. So if you can double that response time, that's awesome because that's how you just halved your server costs basically for your web servers. So that's my number one thing I'm most excited about. Another little thing I'm really excited about is that little I don't know if you've seen it, but there's the double question mark null coalesce operator, so that you don't have to say, if you have an array, a lot of times you'll just say is set and then the array key and then your ternary statement for get that value or whatever default value. Well, now you can just say the array key double question mark default value, so you don't have to do all the is set stuff anymore. So that's a little thing, but that's something I have to do a lot, which is kind of annoying. So that's kind of nice. Mainly the speed, and just even if the speed was the only feature in PHP 7, I would still be so happy with that release because that's a big improvement.
Yeah, and we have rocket ships now, right?
Yeah, I haven't looked into those too much though. I haven't looked into how those work.
Yeah, I'm not sure what they're good for. They just look cool.
Yeah.
What do you feel are the biggest challenges with the PHP platform today? I mean, is it the performance, or do you see other challenges?
I was thinking about this a little bit before. This is just from my, the past few months of me. I've kind of been getting out in the community a little bit more here in Arkansas, and as I interact with developers, one of the biggest things for them about PHP is PHP's sort of like bad history, and they, when I tell them I do PHP, they're like, "Oh crap, that must really suck." And they've moved on usually to Ruby or something like that, and they're using Rails. And I try to explain to them like PHP is way different now. It's totally awesome, and they sort of act like it's sort of like sort of you have like kind of a lame. How you have a person, it's like, I've totally changed now, I promise, I'm not the jerk I used to be, and everyone's like, yeah, right, sure, whatever. That's kind of how they act when I tell them like PHP is totally different, but it really is so much different than it was, probably when they used it a long time ago, and because we have a lot of really cool features now with we even have namespaces and like anonymous functions and stuff like that. So, and I actually was talking to a developer, and he's moved on to other fancy things like Ruby and Rust and all that cool stuff. But I was telling him about some of the new features in PHP, and he was just like blown away, like, wow, I can't believe PHP has all this stuff, and this is so much different than the PHP I remember. So most developers I run into, that's their main complaint about PHP is they did PHP 8 or 9 years ago, and it sucked for them, and now they don't know what it's like today.
Yeah, I think as PHP developers, we always have that conversation. That's usually my thing. Is I tell people who wanna challenge me on the PHP topic is like, listen, if you haven't used it in the last 3 years, we're not going to have a discussion.
Yeah, and see, I'm really lucky because I came into PHP with PHP 5.3. Like, I've never used PHP before 5.3, so I missed a lot of, the dark ages that people talk about, but so I'm really lucky in that regard.
So now, if the PHP platform itself went away, self-destructed tomorrow, would you go back to .NET, or what other platforms out there interest you?
if I had to go to like another web framework today, I guess I would probably go to Rails just because I think it's still more it's still easier and more rapid than .NET, at least from what I've seen. Um, Plus, I don't know if I could go back to PC. Like I think that would really keep me from .NET. So I'd have to go with probably Rails today.
Fair enough. I don't know how it's possible that you could have any free time, but is there anything else you do besides code?
Yeah, I'm actually a huge basketball fan, a big NBA fan. I play basketball in my spare time. I buy NBA League Pass every year. I'm watching games like every night. So that's kind of my main hobby that I keep up with. Other than that, I just sort of hang out around the house, play with the kids, watch TV, watch Star Trek. Big Star Trek fan. Um, so that's it. I mainly work, 8 to 5. My schedule is not too different than it was when I was employed, in a conventional job. And now that I'm working for myself, I still pretty much work 8 to 5. I get up in the morning, and the first thing I do is kind of clear my inbox of all the Forge and Envoy support requests, and then I look at the pull requests. I have this bookmark that shows me all the pull requests across the whole Laravel organization, every repository. And I try to keep that like under 15 or 20 pull requests. And so I'll work a few of those, and then I'll just kind of like hack on whatever I need to hack on for that day. So today I hacked on the login throttling for Laravel. So that's kind of one thing that's missing from the authentication layer is if someone can try to log in basically as many times as they want unless you add your own custom code to stop that. But I'm trying to bake that in so that, if a person logs in more than 3 times or whatever, then it throttles them for like a minute so they have to wait to try again. So that's what I hacked on today.
Nice. Let's see. I lost where we were here. Okay. How happy are you with where the Laravel framework is today?
I'm fairly happy with it. I mean, I'm always kind of thinking about the future, and I'm really just so lucky. Like, not just the framework, but the whole ecosystem is so great. Like, even like Jeffrey Way with Laracast. I mean, I don't know where Laravel would be without Laracast. I mean, I think it would still be popular, but I'm sure he's elevated it to levels that it would have never gone with just me coding. With the crazy amount of tutorials he's put out, and people are just so passionate about it, and they blog about it, and they put out articles, and that's really all so great, and that builds the community up so much. And it's sort of a snowball effect. The more people are blogging about it and making cool stuff with Laravel, then the more people come to Laravel and they're attracted to Laravel, and then they start blogging about it, and it just sort of builds and builds. So I'm really excited about the community. I really like this last LTS release, which is a good release for us because that was sort of a complaint against Laravel. Understandably, was there's no LTS release, and our clients, they only want us to use a framework with an LTS guarantee, which I heard quite a bit. Some web shops, their clients demanded something like Symfony because they know that they can stay on it for a couple of years. So it was nice for us to be able to make that same kind of commitment, to people, to some of the more people that want more long-term support.
Definitely, and I definitely agree with you. I think Laracast was a real game changer. It's so nice when people come up to you and say, I'm interested in getting started with Laravel, and all you have to say is, just go to Laracast.
Yeah.
I can't explain it any better than what this guy does. Go check it out.
Yeah, I mean, he's really at the top of his game. I mean, even in other languages, there are a few people that are putting out that amount of content. So I'm extremely lucky that he thought Laravel was cool and decided to make a ton of videos about it.
Yeah, Jeffrey's a man. In LTS, again, I think that is going to be one of the gateways to getting Laravel into more corporate and enterprise level solutions.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I remember when I worked at, when I was working at my .NET job, and, of course we had a manager, and every time we would pitch something, like I think one time we were pitching a Knockout JS. This was kind of before Angular and all that stuff, and he was like, are we going to be the only persons using this library? What happens if the guy deletes it or something? So it's a very real concern, that I can relate to because I've been there. For people, and they don't know how popular a library is. Even though I may think in my own head Laravel's going to be around for a while and people should feel comfortable using it. You know, a lot of people that are making those kind of decisions don't know, and they don't know who Taylor Otwell or Jeffrey Way is, and they don't even care. You know, they're focused on other things. So people like that stamp and guarantee.
Sure. And do you want to explain a little bit what LTS means to Laravel so everybody understands, you know, when they go back and explain to their bosses and managers, they say, hey, yeah, Laravel has LTS. They can say, this is what that gives us.
Yeah, so LTS, of course, stands for long-term support, and in a Laravel context, it means that you get 2 years of bug fixes. So, you know, if there's just some, you know, just your typical bug fix, and then you get 3 years of security-related bug fixes. So, if this particular bug causes a security issue, which thankfully we haven't had too many of in Laravel's history, but if that were to happen, then you get a guarantee that those will be fixed in Laravel 5.1 for 3 years from the release date, which was you know, basically the start of June. So June 2018, I guess, you're going to get security fixes until that date, and you're going to get regular bug fixes until June 2017. So if a bug fix comes up after June of 2017, but it's not a security release, you know, then you're not going to get that fix, and you'll have to upgrade. But as far as security releases go, 3 years is pretty good, and even, you know, we try to keep our upgrade times pretty small. I try to keep the upgrade times like kind of a day is the maximum that I would ever want an upgrade to take, and that means we release twice a year, so that means you would be spending 2 days a year upgrading Laravel, and I don't really want to put any more overhead on people besides that. So, you know, between the LTS and hopefully we keep our upgrades nice and fairly painless, then that'll be a good setup for people.
Cool. So I found it interesting when you said that Laravel started as a micro framework, because recently, you know, you've kind of come full circle with Lumen, and I know Lumen 5.1 was recently released. You mind just talking a little bit about that and where that's going to fit in moving forward?
Yeah, that's interesting. I never really thought about it that way, but that's kind of funny. Yeah, so where Lumen came from is when I was doing Envoyer, which is kind of our zero downtime deployment service for PHP, not just for Laravel. I had to write a few like supporting services. So Envoyer has this feature, and I'm not trying to pitch Envoyer on you, but it has this feature where it can monitor your cron jobs. So like if you have a job that runs every 10 minutes, you can tell Envoyer that, and it will give you a URL for your cron job to ping after it runs. And if it doesn't hear from that cron job after 10 minutes, it's going to alert you in your Slack channel or your HipChat channel, hey, we haven't heard from this cron job in a while. You might want to check on it. It's because, you know, they go down and you might not know for like 4 days. So when I wrote that, I didn't want people to be setting up these cron jobs and pinging Envoyer every minute, which is the fastest a cron job could run, because if you have 1,000 people doing that and I'm getting pinged 1,000 times every minute for all these silly cron jobs, I didn't want that to like bog down the rest of the app. So what I did was wrote a little Slim service that is on a subdomain, and it handles all those incoming cron job things and updates the database or whatever. And I was just sort of like pained that I really wanted to use like the Laravel database abstraction, because it handles like some of the time zone stuff how I needed to, and it can increment really easily, and it was just sort of nice. And so I wanted to sort of have this micro framework option for sort of API or JSON APIs or small little things you might need to be very performant to kind of support your main app. And so I kind of started hacking on the idea, and it took me probably like 4 or 5 iterations of building it up basically from scratch over the course of a week until I got something that I was happy with. And so, you know, I hope people kind of view it for what it is. Like, I think some people have tried to basically build full heavy applications on top of Lumen because they hear faster and they think, I want faster, and so they use Lumen for everything. But its main goal really is to do either, you know, a simple stateless API and serve up JSON, or maybe only have 3 or 4 routes that are fairly high traffic for your application, and they're kind of doing a support role so that your main application is not bogged down with a lot of requests. So that's kind of the goal of Lumen. You know, it's been fairly popular, I think, and people seem to like it, but The main downside has been, if there is a downside, is people, like I said, people have tried to use it for things I'd never intended it to be used for. It's mainly for small, really small things, but
Yeah. So feel free to pitch to us. I mean, you're taking your time out to talk to us. We're fine with that. You've talked about Envoyer. There's Forge. You've
yeah.
got LTS. When is will Laravel move into becoming more of a company where people could pay for support and things like that? Or have you thought about that?
Yeah, I've thought about that a little bit, and I've thought about ways to execute that. I've been hesitant to do it because um, that's just not really something like I get excited about. You know what I mean? And it's providing support like that for people to on their apps. Um, I think it's a needed thing, and I think that I still want to think about it and try to figure it out. Whether it's not me personally doing it, or um, maybe I recruit a team of people to help me do something like that. But I think it's an interesting idea and would be a valuable thing. It sort of plays into that whole LTS thing, right? Where a lot of companies want something like that, where they can call someone on the phone or email someone, and they know they're going to get a response back, within a couple hours, and they're going to get a response back to someone that knows what they're talking about, especially. Um, so, I don't know what that looks like. Over the course of the next year, I do want to keep brainstorming on that. But right now, my main sort of business aspect of Laravel is Forge and Envoy. And Forge is really like the big dog in terms of supporting me and keeping the whole thing afloat. Envoy is a little more niche in that not everyone really needs the whole zero downtime deployment rollback thing. So if people are just doing their own personal things, or maybe just simple client sites, they might just use Forge. And then if they're doing something pretty serious, they might get on Envoy as well. But those are the two main things, and I'll keep brainstorming the support thing. It's a cool idea. I'm not sure the best way to execute it yet.
Yeah, that's interesting that you mentioned that because, again, when people are having that conversation with their manager about LTS, the next question is long-term support from who? Who am I paying support for? So,
Yeah, exactly.
so I know you've probably seen a lot of Laravel product projects. I was going to get it out. A lot of Laravel sites. Is there anything that wows you? Do you ever see does somebody present something to you that they've done with Laravel that you just kind of go, wow, that's pretty impressive?
I wish people would tell me more about what they do with Laravel. I don't hear as much as you would think, but some of the cool stuff that I have heard was some of the APIs for I think it was the Winter Olympics, were done with Laravel, and the person or the company that wrote all that was a sponsor of Laracon EU, and that was a pretty big Laravel API with a really high traffic API, and they had done some interesting things with the framework. Um, anytime I hear about someone I recognize using Laravel, that's always cool. Like, I mean, I've heard of people like Apple using Laravel internally. Um, a recent one that I tweeted about was the Fallout 4 website, if anyone's into video games, and I'm sure that was mainly coming off like a CD and website, but it's just written in Laravel somewhere behind the scenes. So that was a cool thing to hear about. A few other actually big gaming sites have run on Laravel. I can't remember if I can. I don't remember which ones I'm supposed to mention or which ones I'm not, but I think the Elder Scrolls Online one is okay to mention. They ran on Laravel. So yeah, anything that is kind of like my friends have heard about, like a lot of my friends have heard of Elder Scrolls and Fallout, and if I can tell them like, oh, this runs on Laravel, they always think that's pretty cool.
Cool. I know that there was a little controversy about this maybe a year ago or sooner, not even that far back, but the whole process of submitting bug reports and submitting PRs, pull
Yeah.
requests. Can you kind of give us where that is and what people should be doing?
Yeah, so right now it's basically your typical GitHub project where you can make an issue or submit a pull request. And if I'm really honest, I will say I don't read a lot of the issues. I mainly focus on the pull request, and other people. There's kind of a small, probably 3 or 4 people that read through a lot of the issues and actually do ping me on Slack and say, hey, you might want to take a look at this issue. This looks, like something you're going to have to deal with. But they kind of helped me wade through the issues, and we've kind of gone through, like you mentioned, we've kind of gone through an exploration progress on all the process on all this. So last year when I was not working full time on Laravel, it was very hard to keep up with all the pull requests, and routinely the pull request count would be like 200 plus, which was, that kind of weighs you down, because even if I'm not working on Laravel, in the back of my head I'm thinking I've got 250 pull requests I should be working right now. And so we experimented with this idea of, like, I think at one point we disabled issues entirely, and we just had pull requests, and we had this thing called Laravel Life Raft where you could, like, clone down an issue with the bug report and then fix it and push up like a full Laravel self-contained application that I could pull down and run. And the whole idea was, we've got to streamline this whole process, because I can't recreate every bug report that people are doing, because I'd have to, like, set up database tables and columns. And so if someone could, like, ship me a self-contained application with migrations and the models are set up and all I have to do is hit a route and I can see, oh, here's the bug, that would be really nice. But that really never took off. That was like a flop. So now we're pretty much back to the typical thing, which is it's not bad now, because I work full time on Laravel, and it all is a lot easier to maintain. So it's all sort of a different situation. If I wasn't working on Laravel full time anymore, then it would probably go back to being pretty sucky, and I have to figure out a different way to do it.
I got a couple of questions coming in here. Do you have any plans on implementing PSR 9.10?
I don't remember what 10 is. I think 9 is the cache. And I always kind of have to wait and see what it looks like. Usually it can be done. Even if you have to do it with some kind of, like, adapter or decorator over your current cache, usually it can be brought in. So I'm sure it will probably happen. I don't remember what 10 is though, so I'm not sure.
Fair enough. I'm just reading questions here, but feel free to elaborate if you have anything. Do you have any secret projects you'd like to drop or want to hint at here?
Nothing as cool as Forge or Envoy, I don't think. Right now, it's not really a big secret, but right now I've been hacking on some of the authentication stuff, like I mentioned, and I really want to figure out a way to like I mentioned earlier, to bring in a little more auth scaffolding if you want it. So not something that's part of the framework, but say some package that you pull in, and it gives you, like, the login views, the registration views, and then your forgot password views and all that. Like we had actually in 5.0, but we removed it to kind of keep the framework less opinionated. So some of the scaffolding stuff I'm working on, and sort of like jump start features, I guess you could call them. Like, I want to get started even faster on Laravel. Here's some packages you can pull in to really, like, rapidly prototype something and get started faster. So that's what I'm working on now. I eventually want to build a full app on Laravel, like as a demo application that I can put out there, and it's like a full-fledged app, like I don't know, not a more complicated than a to-do list, like something that's non-trivial that someone could look at, and it could be like a good Laravel example application that people could see kind of the whole thing, how the database works, lots of routes, events, queued jobs, and sort of get an overall picture of what a robust app on Laravel looks like. So I'll probably hack on that soonish in the next few months, start working on that.
Yeah, I heard you talking about that on the podcast. I'm interested to see what you come up with. I actually know the answer to this next one, but I'll go ahead and ask this question since it came in. There's some confusion about why you removed the HTML and forms helpers. Can you kind of go into what was behind that decision?
Okay, originally we removed the HTML helpers because they got a large amount of pull requests. Like, for what I felt like, for what they provided to the framework, I was spending way too much time on moderating HTML and form helper discussions on GitHub, and I just felt like there's bigger fish to fry as far as the web framework goes, rather than working on form and HTML helpers. And so I was able to break those off into an optional kind of a pull-in thing, and now that's maintained by this group called the Laravel Collective, which is kind of I know it sounds like a secret society or something, but they maintain HTML and form helpers and sort of keep support going so people can thankfully still use them, because some people felt pretty passionately that they should be in the framework. But it really was just a time thing at the time. Like I felt like it was not worth spending so much time on HTML helpers, and so we made them optional so that I could focus on things like Eloquent, like the ORM, or like the routing layer, core features of the framework. I felt like.
Oh, I think we might have lost you.
Yeah, I'm here. I can
There
hear
you go. All right. Okay, I did want to take an opportunity to open up the floor. Does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask Taylor? This might be the only chance you have in your life. Anybody? Good. So this mic up here is hot. If you want to walk up there, go ahead. So you don't know much about his services. I'm going to ask that question anyways. So the question is, what tools do you use for your development, continuous integration, deployment? I think we know the answer, but I'll let you answer it.
Okay, so starting from the very beginning, I have a MacBook Pro 13-inch Retina, one of the new ones with the new Force Touch trackpad, which is crazy weird. I'm not really sure I believe that this is not moving. I'm pretty sure this trackpad moves, but I use Sublime Text to do my code editing. Of course, GitHub, Git. I use Wunderlist to keep track of my to-do list, and like 5 communication applications like Skype, IM, Slack, Telegram, blah blah blah. And then to run all my servers, I use Linode, linode.com. I originally went with Linode because they have a pretty easy to use node balancing setup that's built in. So other than that, it's pretty equivalent to DigitalOcean. I use Forge to create the servers, forge.laravel.com, and that installs PHP, Nginx, SSL certificates, all that. And then I use Envoyer to deploy them with 0 downtime. And Envoyer even deploys itself. There's a dev instance of Envoyer that deploys out the production copy of Envoyer. So that was pretty fun to write. What else do I use? I actually use Laravel Envoy, which is a free command line task runner. If you go to the Laravel documentation, there's an Envoy section on the left, but basically it's like Fabric for Python, but you can define like server tasks. And so I have a few server tasks to like update the Laracon website, do a few remote tasks. We use Travis CI for running our Laravel tests. I think that's pretty much the whole gamut of everything we use.
Cool. Answer your question? Excellent. Anybody else? Questions? All right. Looks like we're on. What? Yeah, that's my last thing. Yeah. Anything else? All right. So everybody would like to hear a little bit about Laracon. I know I'm excited about it. How do you want to talk about Laracon a little bit?
Sure. So, of course, August 11th and 12th in Louisville. I think it's going to be a really good conference. I'm really excited about the venue. It's probably the nicest venue that we've had for any Laracon, and the previous venues have been pretty nice. I'm not saying those were dumpy, but this is just a really big, nice venue with plenty of room for hanging out in between, on the breaks and getting food and drinks and stuff like that. It's a cool area of Louisville. It's right by what's called 4th Street Live, I think it's what it's called, and there's lots of cool restaurants. The Hard Rock Cafe is down there, lots of local restaurants, and the hotel that we actually recommend on the Laracon website is connected to all that, so you can walk right to everything, and there's lots of cool stuff to do down there. I think the talk lineup is really good. We've got 12 speakers, and probably about half, or a little more than half, of the talks are code and kind of techie, and then the other half are professional development talks, so stuff like teamwork, that kind of thing, keeping your project healthy, Ed Finkler's talking about developers and mental health. And then, of course, we have a handful of Laravel talks and tech talks. So it's a really good speaker lineup. And I really put a big emphasis on picking really great speakers for Laracon because it is a single track conference. So if we're kind of forcing you to listen to the specific set of speakers, we want to make sure they're actually good and that people have come away with good information. So and then we're also having both days after the conference from 5 to 7, we'll have sort of like drinks and refreshments right at the venue. There's plenty of space. There's a full kind of restaurant and bar thing right there at the venue that people can hang out, and so you don't really have to go across town to some other location. It's all kind of going to be right there downtown and really convenient. So I'm pretty pumped about it. I'm bringing the whole crew out there, wife, kids. Even my mom is coming to Laracon to help with the kids. So, yeah, it's going to be fun.
Excellent. What about Laracon EU? Is the family traveling with you to that?
No, no, they're not all coming to EU. I'm not sure like all the details of EU because that's really something that Sean and Jeroen manage. But I know they have a really sweet venue over there too. I think it's actually like a really historic church or something like that. And they put a lot of effort in. They actually have workshops at Laracon EU with Ross Tuck and who else? Someone else. Adam Wathan is doing a Laravel workshop. Ross is doing a doctrine workshop. So I mean, they always run a really good show over there. I mean, Sean takes it like super serious about making his conference like the best value he can for people. So I know if you bought a ticket to Laracon EU, if anyone's listening, I don't think you'll be disappointed.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm excited about Laracon US. I've already checked it out. People look at me kind of weird when I tell them I'm going to a conference in Louisville, but I saw the minor league baseball team is playing right down the street, like a couple of miles away.
Nice.
They're in town, so I already have planned to go there one night. It's going to be a good time.
Yeah, it'll be fun. I mean, for me, the funnest part is always just hanging out with people. Like I think that's true for a lot of people. They just like meeting all the other developers and talking shop and just sort of socializing.
So we're getting some questions. That people are interested in what other hobbies you might be interested in.
So the basketball stuff, of course, like I mentioned. What other hobbies do I have? I've been going through Star Trek Deep Space Nine. No spoilers because I've never seen this. I've never seen this Star Trek series, even though it's like 20 years old. I've been going through that at night. Gosh, what else? That's I don't have any other big hobbies right now, really.
Fair enough.
I used to like geocaching a little bit in college, but I haven't really done that in a long time. That was pretty fun.
Yeah. Okay. So this could be a little bit of a political minefield. So feel free to answer as abstractly as you like. Are there any frameworks out there that you kind of avoid? Yeah, you would suggest people to avoid or don't really agree with their philosophy?
To be honest, I wouldn't know, really. Like I said, when I first came into PHP, I used CodeIgniter. The only reason I wouldn't recommend CodeIgniter now is just that it's sort of dated. But I've never really used any other PHP frameworks to actually build something real, and I would never really comment on them unless I had built something. Like I wouldn't tell you to avoid Symfony because I'd never built anything in Symfony. Like I've read their docs, and to me, of course, it looks harder than Laravel because I wrote Laravel. I don't, it's hard for me to be totally unbiased, but I've never built anything in Symfony. I've never built anything in Cake or Zend or Yeast, so I would not really be giving you an informed opinion on if those are good frameworks. Obviously, some people really like them, and I think it's important just to use whatever clicks with you, and whatever makes you the most productive, because that's really what it's all about for me. Is like I just want to get stuff done and ship cool stuff, and whatever lets me get there the fastest, that's kind of what I want to use. Like if something came out that was more productive than Laravel, like I want to say I would start using that instead of Laravel because to me it's just about being productive. So yeah, I wouldn't know. I've never built any other framework.
That was actually a fantastic answer. Fantastic. And the other question was, do you have a favorite episode of Deep Space Nine? Next Generation. Do you have a favorite episode?
For Next Generation, probably that Inner Light episode was pretty. That was pretty hardcore. I will admit I cried on that episode. That's the one that really sticks out on me for Next Generation. The finale of Next Generation was actually really good too. That was a really powerful episode. For Deep Space Nine, definitely that Visitor episode. That was like, it shouldn't even be legal to make TV that sad. Like that was so dang sad, but it was so good. That was a good episode. But I'm only on season. I'm on season 5, so I mean I've got several seasons to go, and people say season 6 is the best season. So I haven't peaked yet, probably on Deep Space Nine.
Cool. Any other questions? All right. Taylor, I want to thank you again for taking the time to talk to us. I really appreciate it. Is there anything else you want to talk about? Anything else you want to put out there?
Not really. I'm on Slack. We have a Laravel Slack. It's LaraChat, LARACHAT.co. It's not .com, just the .co. But we have a lot of different channels within that, and I'm in there every day. There's an internals channel, so if you're interested in like contributing to Laravel, you can go in the internals channel, and that's usually the one I'm watching, and you can ask questions, whatever. There's a front porch channel just for general and off-topic stuff. So come hang out there if you want to get more involved or you want to ask me anything else. You can always just message me there.
Okay. Well, thanks again. I'm going to go ahead and stop the broadcast. And
Alrighty.
I appreciate you joining us tonight.
All right. Thanks a lot.